This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
A rally in oil prices took a break on Tuesday as the market waits for Israel's response to last week's Iranian rocket attacks that triggered a price surge on concerns of a broader conflict in the Middle East. Both benchmark contracts rose more than 3% on Monday to their highest since late August, adding to last week's rally of 8%, the biggest weekly gain in over a year, on concerns that hostilities could disrupt oil supplies from the Middle East. Brent crude futures were down $1.62, or 2%, to $79.31 per barrel at 10:14 GMT. U.S. West Texas Intermediate futures were down $1.60, or 2.07%, to $75.54 a barrel.
Power producers in the United States have lifted natural gas-fired generation to new highs over the first 9 months of 2024, sustaining the country's position as the leading driver of global natural gas consumption. Natural gas's share in the U.S. generation system also climbed to new highs this year. Gas supplied a record 46% of total power since June, LSEG data shows, as power firms boosted output from all sources to meet rising power demand. The fast growth pace of gas use in the U.S. undermines the country's credibility as a potential leader in energy transition efforts, and is at odds with stated ambitions to lower fossil fuel use in power generation by 2030.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
India's fuel consumption in September fell by 1.6% year-on-year to 17.92 million metric tons, its lowest in 2 years, oil ministry data showed on Monday, as above-normal monsoon rains continued to weigh on diesel demand. On a monthly basis, fuel demand was down 2.7% from 18.41 million tons in August, data from the Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cells website showed. Demand last month was at its lowest since September 2022. Sales of gasoline, or petrol, rose 3% from a year earlier to 3.15 million tons. Diesel consumption was down by 1.8% year-on-year to 6.37 million tons in September, also its lowest in years.
Russian oil firms have been discussing diesel exports ban for those who do not produce the fuel, as the companies may lose out on subsidies in the form of so-called damper payments, Interfax news agency reported on Tuesday, citing unnamed sources. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Chinese lithium producers are flooding the global market with the critical metal and causing a predatory price drop as they seek to eliminate competing projects, a senior U.S. official said on a visit to Portugal that has ample lithium reserves. Jose Fernandez, Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy and the Environment at the U.S. Department of State, told a briefing late on Monday that China was producing much more lithium than the world needs today, by far. China accounts for about 2/3 of the world's lithium chemical output, which is mainly used in battery technologies including for electric cars. Prices of lithium have fallen more than 80% in the past year, largely due to overproduction from China and a drop in demand for electric vehicles.
Copper prices fell on Tuesday to their lowest in 2 weeks, after top metal consumer China failed to convince investors on how its stimulus would get the economy back on track. 3-month copper on the London Metal Exchange fell earlier to $9,700 per metric ton, the lowest level since September 24. It last traded 1.8% lower at $9,745 a ton as at 10:26 GMT. Copper prices hit 4-month high last week, after China announced its biggest stimulus package since the pandemic. Analysts had anticipated bold moves on lifting the heavily indebted property sector that weighed on consumer confidence.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Implementation of higher biodiesel mandates in Indonesia, the world's biggest palm oil producer, is likely to tighten supplies of the vegetable oil, a leading industry analyst said on Tuesday. Indonesia currently has a mandatory 35% blend of palm oil-based fuel in biodiesel and is seeking to ramp up to biodiesel containing 40% palm oil to cut its energy imports. The plan, if implemented, could see biodiesel consumption rise to 16 million kilolitres next year. The move would involve the additional use of 1.5 to 1.7 million metric tons of palm oil, leading to lower export volumes, Oil World senior analyst David Mielke told a palm oil conference in Kuala Lumpur.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.